So my name's, as Anderson said, Brian Lipscomb. I'm the CEO for Energy Keepers. In Salish, Kasuklu Mumal Alkamonkwets is the tribal name for our company. And that stands for Energy Keepers, those who take care of the energy for the people. That was the name of our company that we established as we stood it up to take over management of this facility in the middle of our reservation that controls the lifeblood of our people, the Flathead Lake and the lower Flathead River. I'm an engineer, tribal member, born and raised on the reservation, and spent my life on Flathead Lake. Not year-round, but my grandma and grandpa lived there, so we were there often, all seasons. Got my degree in engineering, went off and did some work with the Forest Service for about a decade while I did that, and I had the opportunity to come back in 1992 and work for the tribe as the Fish and Wildlife Manager, and they handed me the file for this project and said, we're the co-licensee, but we need mitigation measures. So away I went and got those established and added 25 articles into the complicated license that now is the governing structure for the facility we operate. Had a wonderful time doing that for about 15 years. And then I took an opportunity, went to Portland for 5 years and helped coordinate mitigation for the entire federal hydropower system, extending from Hungry Horse up here all the way to Bonneville Dam, amongst 13 tribes, 4 state agencies, and a couple federal agencies. So it gave me a real broad understanding of how the system works. And then in 2010, when the tribes were rapidly moving towards acquisition of this facility, they brought me back home again as the director of the then newly created Department of Energy, and they handed me the file again and said, Brian, we're going to buy it. Here's the estimated conveyance price. Let's go get this figured out. So we stood up Energy Keepers, and then they assigned me as CEO, and we've been up and operational since 2012. Took over the facility in 2015, launched as an independent power producer. We're a Section 17 corporation, which what that means is under the Indian Reorganization Act, which is what the tribes first organized under. We also have opportunity as tribes to create businesses, because most of us don't tax. We can't tax. So we need streams of income to support our governments. We at Salish Kootenai have a whole family of corporations, so we're a member of that family of corporations. We're a for-profit entity. We bring those profits right back to the government so that they can provide services. We do that with a resource that is in the middle of our reservation, using our water and the resources that are impacted by it. A little unique from that perspective. All of our other corporations aren't that. They're different. S&K Electronics, for example, technologies. We have a bank, gaming, those types of things. They don't have tribal resource responsibility like we do. So that's makes us partly unique. We're also unique because in the energy space, can be lucrative if you manage it correctly. And so I'm excited to say we have been successful and expanded our business way beyond the facility and are driving income back into the tribes at a rate far beyond all of our expectations. We have several streams of income. One of them's quarterly. Just made a payment last week that exceeds now $205 million back to the tribe from the company. So excited about all of that. Anderson is correct. We're in charge of the top 10 feet of Flathead Lake, which many people don't realize is a reservoir. That's not the natural level of Flathead Lake. It brings it up to the full pool. That's natural. Sort of, but it never stayed there historically. It would go down as fast as the rivers go down. And so typically what you would see is come up, touch it, and go back down almost immediately. And by August, you'd be down to minimum pool again, 2883, 2882. And so as we start looking at what's going on now, which back to the exciting part about being here today to talk with all of you, is that an opportunity to talk about what is hitting at ground zero in one of the largest resources in western Montana, Flathead Lake. And having to wrestle this to ground and make people understand that what we're facing is real. Climate change is real, and it's going to impact us in profound ways that we have never, ever experienced. And so we got people's attention. Needless to say, it is conversation everywhere I go. My wife and I are taking a break tomorrow morning. That's part of why we're up here staying with Ben, our son, which some of you got to meet today. This energy business runs in the family a little bit. You can imagine some of our dinner time conversations. So, we definitely, what I have to say about it when I appreciate all of this is, man, we got people's attention. And what you guys are doing is trying to say, okay, we already know this is impacting, now let's have a conversation about it. And so we have an opportunity to just drive this out even farther because people are really starting to ask now. Yeah, we have the aspects of people making up stuff, basically, bottom line. And the conspiracy theories, we sold the water, we have too many power contracts, we drained the lake because we want to buy back the shoreline. I've heard it all. It's like, no, that didn't happen. And so when I get the chance then, and that's prevalent in the community, and people are just asking me, what's going on? And so I bring in the presentation and I show them, here's the data. Here's how we have had a runoff last year that we have never, ever seen. And it started from a snowpack that wasn't bad, really. And if you contrast it to the year before, you might all remember is that the lake overfilled, which again, lots of conspiracy theories. In fact, I got a call, one day we got a threatening call from a citizen in the north part of the valley that said, you guys better open those floodgates. If not, we're coming down there and taking over that facility with some vigilantes and we'll do it. And they didn't realize that the lake fills by itself and it overfilled by itself. We worked proactively with the Bureau of Reclamation to help manage that big slug of water that we got from the east, which I'll talk about in a moment, so that we flooded Columbia Falls in a minor way, foot or two, for about 12 or 14 days, instead of waiting and having a 13-foot flood for one day, which if we would have done that, the lake would have had the potential to overfill by 3 feet for a day or two. So we did as best we could between the two operators to manage that flood. But you put those two things together and you look at the snowpack, it was almost identical as we finished the seasons for both years. And what you're seeing is the extremes, driven by this change in temperatures that we all see every day in the graphs that here's the global temperature and the reports from the UN, which talk about this 1 degree or 1.5 degrees now, or I think I saw a report today, the last 9 months, hottest on record. February exceeded again the hottest February on record worldwide. We're at 1.7, I think, if I can remember the number right. It's like, well, let's get pretty close to 2. So it's happening, and what the challenge is, though, is that means nothing to anybody in the room. I mean, in our community. That means nothing. I mean, today is kind of a close to normal day. And that's not the problem. The problem is, what are the variabilities that drive that increase? And understanding then what is going to happen with those variabilities. So those worldwide cycles that drive the big cycles for us, El Nino and La Nina, what's happening there? Why is this year drier than any dry we've ever experienced? Why was 2022 the end of a 3-year La Nina that I've only experienced 3 times in my life? I missed the first 2 because I wasn't paying attention. That's rare. That's a rare event. And then in the middle of those extremes of going back and forth between El Nino and La Nina, which we seem to be just yin-yang, and since we've taken over the facility, we've been ENSO neutral for very little of that time. When that was what we were kind of, when you look backwards, we were mostly ENSO neutral and mostly predictable. Most of our water coming in the form of snow every winter. But that's, when we look ahead, that's not what we're going to have. And we see it this year, right in our face. El Nino the second year, extreme. And I was putting up data in front of community last fall as we're talking about this severe El Nino forecast for 2024. Sure enough, here we are. Snowpack that's right at the bottom for us here in the Flathead. It's not the bottom, but it's close. So we're worse off this year than we were last year at this time, snowpack-wise. Our water supply volumes are not too bad, not as bad as last year. But I also don't trust them because those models are based on looking backwards because they can't forecast going ahead. They haven't experienced it yet, so the model's not smart enough. So you combine that with then the extremes within those extremes, okay? So you think about those cycles are going to be like this. The wets are wetter and the colds are colder, and the dries are drier, hots are hotter. So this gradual increase into the future that you see for temperature isn't going to be a gradual get there. It's going to be like this, up and down, up and down. And the volatility around it gets worse. So that really has some profound impacts. And I'll just talk a little bit today because I could be here all night. I'll just talk about the water side of it, our hydrologic cycle. There's a whole other energy side of it that is equally important as we think about this. But let's stay focused on the water and hydropower for a second. So in the world that we work in then, as we think about hydropower, and that's, the facility is licensed to be a hydro generator. It's a power plant first. That top 10 feet of the lake is there for power generation with some conditions. So we have authorization to flood the lake, bring it up to 2893, and use that 1.2 million acre feet of storage for generating power. There are no requirements to keep it full. There are no requirements for keeping it empty. We have authorization to fill it up under flood control requirements, and then we have some fish and wildlife constraints with some shoreline erosion, and then we have some minimum in-stream flow constraints for keeping the river watered, because the previous owners didn't. They operated it completely different. Montana Power Company in 1996, when I was drafting the mitigation conditions, took the lower river from 4,000 cubic feet per second at night to 14,000 cubic feet per second during the day, in the fall, in the summer. Ben and his brother and Allie and I all floated the lower river one summer and camped on the river. I think Ben and Taylor were about yay. Pulled into this beautiful little backwater with the drift boat, camped by shore. These guys swam in it all evening. It was about 3 feet deep. We got up in the morning, and the river's, I think 14,000 cubic feet per second. We got up in the morning, and it's 4,000 cubic feet per second. We got to drag the drift boat, no kidding, from here past that exit sign over there to get to the river, across the gravel bar. That's what the previous owners have done to our resources. And they worked in a system where they wanted to keep the lake as full as they could to use the energy in the winter. That's not where we're at today. We're getting the water differently, first of all, and then the demand is pushing us to use some of that in the summer for cooling because the energy demand's there. And so that's going to get worse. It's going to continue to exacerbate. That shift is going to continue to happen, and you can see it as you look at the forecast when you appreciate that our systems are changing to where we're going to get in western Montana to where we don't have a snow-driven system anymore. I think it's by turn of the century we're forecasted our snow level is going to go to 10,000 feet. So I think Big Mountain Whitefish Mountain's 8,500. 66. In the Missions, the highest peak in the Missions, McDonald Peak, is just about that much below 10,000 feet. So there's going to be no snow. But the forecast says we're going to get, in general, we're going to get wetter, warmer and wetter. So on the wet years, we're wetter. On the dry years, we're drier. And on average, we're wetter. Well, what that means is that all of this water that we now get in the form of snow is going to come in the form of rain. Will be a rain-driven system. There are hydroelectric systems that are rain-driven. Okay, so what that means is you turn that whole thing upside down. The lake will have to be empty going into fall to catch the winter rains and control flooding, store the water for the use next summer. That's where we're headed, and it's going to be an ugly trip getting there. So really appreciate what you guys are doing here, stimulating conversation about this, and I'll tell you that the conversation will continue to be stimulated by us on the other end, because this year is forecasted, my guess is, will be as bad, if not worse, than we were last year as far as trying to maintain a lake level that people were anything used to in the past. So thank you all for having the conversation.